I am so excited to introduce our second speaker of the night. So, our second speaker is Shambhavi, and she has a South African penguin named after her swimming somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. She was once stuck in a landslide in the Himalayas for a week and declared missing or dead. And for her, life is gym and gym is life. Come on up here and share your fuck up.
I have been a very good public speaker in my life, but today is the first time in my life I am actually nervous. We've always been taught about talking about how good we are. We did this. I'm 40 under 40, I'm 30 under 30. Nobody taught us, especially women, to talk about failures, disappointment, imposter syndrome. And I am going to be, I've promised this to myself, I'm going to shed every title that I have, whether I'm a VC, McKinsey, IBM, every fanciness that I have in my life, and I'm going to talk to all of you here as humans, as people who are somewhere struggling in their life stories, and maybe through me, you get some guidance or coaching in your life. So I'm just going to be an instrument today. Everything unfiltered, like I rightly said. Before I jump into my story, I'm not talking about one mistake that I did in my life, which changed my life and I became this new person. No. Today I'm going to talk about something which I have never spoken about. It's about my existence. It's about me not living my authentic life and how it impacted me in 40 years of my existence. So there will be a lot of things that I might talk as a person, as a child, of what I went through and how till date it plays in my professional life. So bear with me, nothing too intense, but there will be flavors of a few things. Okay, this is me. I want to talk about my roots, where I come from. I come from India. I've lived in a small tier 2 city in a very middle class family, which thrived on ambition, which thrived on girls. Even when a girl is born, they decide whether the child will become an engineer or a doctor. So the day you were born, you were given a title. This child will be good in mathematics and will become an engineer. I was that child. I used to do amazingly good in school. If I used to come second in my grade, like we have a ranking system in schools. So if I used to come second, and if I used to go to my father and say I came second, it was never congratulations about second, but it was a question, why didn't you come first? I was always the perfect child, always somebody who was doing immensely well at school, extracurricular, cricket, outdoor events, races. On a personal note, my father also moved out of our family very early on. So I grew in a family where my mother was the sole bread earner of the family. And I'll tell you why it is important to say that. In India, in those eras like 1980s, 1990s, it's a very patriarchal society. If a woman is divorced, if she's single, people judge you. People cast you out of your family systems. I saw that. So even as a kid, when you see me in this picture, I look funny. But you know what I'm trying to do here? I'm trying to be that perfect child that my mother wants to be. At a fancy dress competition, I hate this dress. I hate makeup. I don't like lipsticks. This is not who I am. But in my mind, I'm like, no, this is going to make her happy. So I should tick the box and be the perfect child and get everything right on paper. I was also a protector. Um, I grew up taking care of people. My brother had a critical illness in the family, so I had to step up my role of being In India, they call it the man in the family. So I used to be protective about my family. And until date, till my therapist pointed out, she said that stop rescuing people, stop protecting people. But I'll tell you the positive side. I don't know how, I've always had immense amount of kindness in my heart, whether it is for people, whether it is for people who did bad. And I have still kept that little flame of kindness alive. Even as a kid, I would go out and rescue stray dogs, just bring them home. They are dirty, filthy, have ticks going on in their bodies. And my father would be like, what are you doing? So the three things I wanted to point from my picture is I have strived for perfection. My life has been a checkbox of ambition. McKinsey checked, IBM checked, B School checked, GPA of 5 check, national award winner of some technology checked. Everything has been perfect, and that's what leads me to what's happening internally. As women, I'm sure a lot of people, especially in Canada, we all come from very different cultures. We come from different immigrant backgrounds. We have a lot of internalization of things. During that process of growing up, I always had that hunger to be accepted. Since I was in grade 1, I knew I am queer. I used to imagine about my school teacher, but I never understood the concept of what does a gay person mean. Till I turned 38, I did not accept it. I was like, I would question my existence constantly, thinking, I cannot be this wrong person. I am the perfect child. I can't be gay. And kept happening. Things kept happening. I was suffocated. One thing is when you grow up, when you're out, you have accepted yourself, it gives you a lot of strength. I denied myself of all of that. I always felt a sense of lack in my life, which I would overcompensate in my professional endeavors. So on paper, on CV, everything is going great. I'm scaling up the corporate ladder, getting promoted. But internally, I just had that feeling. I was constantly denying my own existence. Why I'm talking about this in Fuckup Nights is not one event, but when you question your existence, I constantly questioned. I imagined maybe I'm born in the wrong body. Maybe I am a shame to my family. If I come out, people are going to outcast my family or my mom. So I should just be that perfect child and continue living and continue doing. But in those moments, I also built this closeness to animals. And I reflect that why am I so attached to, let me give you an option. If a human and a dog is dying, I will save the dog. So I am that person who has an incredible amount of kindness. Like I have walked on hikes with bears, or I've been stuck in landslides, but I have always had that innate connection to animals because there was nobody else who would accept me. I always had a pet dog throughout my growing up days, and I always felt that these animals don't judge me. These animals don't care who I am. These animals don't care who I am on paper, on CV. So I've always like Marsha mentioned that we rescued a penguin, and we adopted her. My partner gifted it to me, and we named her Bhavi, and she's now floating somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. You might even see me on the streets of Toronto rescuing raccoons. Uh, my partner literally says that, guys, you need to stay away from raccoons. And I would cross the street. I have rescued raccoons, driven them all the way to Toronto Wildlife Center. But the point I'm trying to say is that was a rescue for me. That was a safe space that whatever I could not talk to anybody, those animals became a part of my existence. Everything went on track. I used to work in McKinsey. I had a flourishing career, but I constantly suppressed myself. I worked in a very, very toxic environment. I was depressed. I was constantly trying to search for a meaning in life. And I'm somebody who always constantly strives to find purpose in life. And in that purpose of life, I thought I should start an organic farming company. I started the company. The company was actually started in memory of one of my friends who passed away because of autoimmune disorder. And I wanted to use her in her memory. I started to build a business in organic farming. I started to help her family cope up with the grief of losing a daughter. I was like, you know what, let me build this dream out for you. I used to travel to very remote Indian villages, work with the farmers, and, and just continue to do that. But in that process, because I was constantly seeking for validation from people, I actually got sucked into a cult. That cult, I would not call that a bad feeling, let me be nice about it, but that cult changed me. It changed the way I would dress. It made me way more judgmental towards people. It isolated me, and I was stuck in a rut in those years. And then suddenly, overnight, I felt, okay, this is my tribe. These are my people. My farming business was taken away from me overnight. They changed the papers. I was kicked out of that company. And in 36 hours, I was in the hospital with my mother beside me because I just could not take that trauma. But this is something that I really wanted to build. I stopped reading news about organic farming anywhere that shopped up because it would spur so much trauma. I was living in Mumbai that time. And I just took a step back. And while the constant pressure of being accepted, of belongingness, that is what drove me to even this cult that I was sucked into. In spite of that, I walked out of that business. I started my life again. And you know what I did after that to recover? I got a motorcycle. Um, this motorcycle is not just a motorcycle for me. As a kid, you know, in India, it's a thing. Women don't now things are changing, but if I look back, women in India don't are judged if they ride motorcycles. I have been judged myself, and for the longest time, I would just borrow my friends' motorcycles and just ride. But this is a decision that I took for myself, for my own inner child. My family was against it, but my brother and I, we conspired, and I got this. And this became my companion. I would just get on this bike every time I would feel, it was, I don't know, are there any queer people here in the room? Okay, okay. I'm sure a lot of queer people can relate to it. There is a lot of loneliness and there is a lot of isolation that we live with. There is a lot of questioning that we do, that why are we born like this? Maybe something went wrong. Maybe I was not the favorite child. Maybe I even felt that maybe there is some defect in me. And this motorcycle gave me a lot of comfort. Just riding at night on this bike with the throttle constantly, this became my companion. In the midst of this, I've always been very close to nature. I would find my solace in going to the mountains, in just wandering away. I've been stuck in landslides, like Masha said. Like, I've done crazy stuff just to soothe that inner part of myself, which I was constantly overlooking. When I left India for Canada, I did not cry leaving my family. I cried because I could not give my motorcycle away. So that is the connection. And now also when I speak to you, my throat flares up because this is a part of my soul. And if you have a motorcycle in this room, I'm sure a few of you can relate to it, what riding can mean for somebody. Fast forward, now I'm in Central Park. Fast forward, how did this jump happen? In the midst of my comfortable life, of course, professionally, I was doing immensely well. I was working for a big fund, I was doing deals, and I was on track to become the partner, and I was like, oh, life is good. Internally, I was suffocated. I would pray every day that maybe my life should just end. Maybe my existence on this earth is not needed. Maybe I should be reborn again. Something spurred, and I decided, let me just quit everything and let me move to a country where I can be who I am. So Canada came as an option. On my way to Canada, because I've never given an opportunity to myself to fail, I can't fail. Like this is, in our society in India, failing is considered to be a very bad thing. Like if you are a failure, you are a disaster. So I could not fail. So in my efforts, I figured out something that, okay, you know what, let me get this job. I found a job, and the CEO used to live close to New York, and he was like, you know what, come here for 3 months, we'll pay you this much money. We have an extra whatever room. You come here, you should stay with us. I will bring you into the company, and then you can go to Canada, set up the Canadian office. I was like, okay, that's good. I have a job like any other. Most immigrants don't have a job when they come to Canada. And I was like, you know what? I have a job, and life is doing fairly well. I should go to Canada. I sit in the flight. I come to New York, and I'm working with the CEO for 2 months, 2.5 months, 3 months. And he does not pay me. He does not, he did not sign my papers. I got sick. I got admitted to a hospital, and the insurance that they bought for me did not work. And now I am thinking that how could I do this to myself, and who should I call? If I call my mother, I don't think she has the visa or the money to even come to the US. And where will she come? And that night in the hospital, my whole life flashed in front of me that your life is screwed up. Like you were living a pretty good life and you messed up again. And now and I remember sitting in Central Park that day, and I was just like, okay, where do I go from here? I cannot go back to India because I can't fail. That's what I have been taught. I cannot fail. I have to figure this shit out right away. And then I was like, how do I escape from the CEO's house? Like, he is clearly keeping me as a hostage. I need to figure out a way to get out of here. I call up my friend in India, and I was like, just change your voice and call as if you are my mom. And she called up the CEO, and she was like, oh, hello. So we had to manipulate it because he had all my documents. And I was like, even if I go complain to the police is going to catch hold of me because I'm legally not allowed to work in the US, and so I can't even complain against him. I think that was a defining moment where I felt like there's nothing worse that can happen to me. Maybe the Central Park should just open and I should just die and dissolve. It was a scary moment. Anyway, fast forward. I figured out a way. I manipulated the CEO. I was like, you know what, just I'm going to Canada for my paperwork and I'll be back in a week, and then we'll work again. I just packed my bags. I took the first flight out and I escaped. I land in this country. I don't know anybody. I have $3,000 in my account. That's all the savings that I had. And I was like, I need to figure my shit out in this country. Otherwise, I have to pack my bags and go. There is some good things that I have done, I think, rescuing animals. So the karma brownies came to me, is what I would like to tell myself. I figured out an opportunity. The people who I used to work for in India, the Family Office Fund, I had a good track record, and they were like, oh, we never knew you were in Canada. Just let's start working together. And I start again. What I want to talk about here, I want to talk to everybody and now this is the next phase that I really want to communicate. Being an immigrant, being somebody who does not know people in the VC space, the venture capital space in Canada sucks. People are here to question you. I have been, if I look at my track record versus any other VC that, I'm saying it on record, please don't post it online, but any other VC who I know, you compare my track record with them, I've given returns back to the fund. I have a good DPI on my profile. I have been in rooms where I have been sidelined, pushed away. Oh, you're an immigrant. You know what? You don't have Canadian experience. You know what? Maybe you should go back to India, because this is what people have told me inside forums. But I was constantly underestimated. And all this is happening while I'm still figuring out. My constant question about my sexuality is definitely a big question mark on my existence. But the lesson I learned in that journey was that I did not give up. I would show up in places filled with all white men, and I would stand and talk about what venture investing looks like. That's where people started noticing me. And the reason I'm trying to say is not that I am a brave heart who being the star of VCs. No. The point I'm trying to say is I did not give up. I did not fall into the judgment of venture capitalists in Canada. I believed in my story. I would show up every fucking day. I would show up, and people started noticing that, oh, you are at every event. I would literally sit at Jimmy's Cafe and I would post out on LinkedIn, any founder who needs coaching, I am at this cafe. Founders started showing up. I would spend mindless hours, countless hours, just coaching founders. And that's where I started believing in myself, and that, you know what, stop accepting the narrative of Canadian VCs. You've got enough experience, you've got enough balls to shake things up in this ecosystem. And I did it. And it was not, so for anybody here, I'm sure I know a few faces here who are trying to crack into the startup ecosystem or VC ecosystem. It's a hard journey here, because especially if you're a woman or if you are an underrepresented founder, and forget it, if you're a gay founder, like I have been in those rooms. The point I'm trying to tell you is that you have to be constantly persistent. The other lesson that happened in this while was I came out to my mom finally. I was ousted for months. I was ousted. I was the worst kid ever. I literally felt that this is the worst I could do to my family, because I was the perfect child, and now I am this child who is betrayed, who did not keep up with the expectations of the family, who has changed because they went to Canada and adopt. I went through all of that. I did not leave therapy. I did not leave working out. In that state, I would show up and I would just work out. I would show up and I would just work out. It was mentally exhausting given all the other moving pieces, but I continued giving out. I continued giving back. I also identified my tribe, and my tribe was largely founders. The network of founders who I used to spend so much time with. And that's how I spearheaded and started my life 2.0. I met my wonderful partner. Her name is Renee. She's also in this room. And you know what changed? Oh, I also met my dog. So this is Diwali. So in India, we put a thing on your head on Diwali. So we celebrated. And honestly, when I got the dog, he's a rescue. He found me. And that time I was like still quite alone in this country. And I was like, you know what? Now Togo is with me. Canada is home. I'm not leaving Canada. And the last point I want to drive here is, when I started valuing myself personally, coming out sometimes is such an important thing in any queer person's life, because all the years of your existence, imagine you wearing shoes that you were never comfortable with. And you have to constantly keep justifying that these are the right shoes, constantly keep justifying to myself that these are the right shoes. No, you can't go wrong with those shoes. Coming out to yourself is the best thing that I could do to myself, to that inner child who was constantly striving, without an opportunity to go wrong. The moment I started standing by myself, the moment I started respecting my journey, the moment I started believing that everything that you have done in life, everything that you have been through in life is your existence and nobody can deny that from you. That is the time I started picking up on my career again. I got the courage. I would show up. I would got invited for speaker series. I'm doing amazing things and I'm not going to stop here. I'm going to stand up for every person, for every woman founder, for every founder who comes from an LGBTQ background. I'm going to stand up for them and make sure that they are heard, they are visible, and they are acknowledged in the venture capital ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your incredible journey. There's so many twists and turns to that story, from the cult to the motorcycle to, feeling desperate in Central Park to now in Canada where you're feeling at home. I'm so glad that your journey has come full circle like this. I think a lot of people probably related. I remember during the stand-up, if a lot of people stood up during, if you feel like you're not living your authentic life. So hopefully this talk encourages you to kind of chase your dreams and be true to yourself. So yeah, we're gonna open it up for some Q&A. I think we're probably only gonna have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions if we can keep it brief, and then afterwards you can connect with the speakers in person as well. So I'll hand it over to you and let's try to keep it brief for the Q&A.